Hi everyone, it's time for another episode of Atoms for the Love of Movie Picks. This time around, we're going to be talking about the 2015 hit movie Pixels. So, Pixels, basically, like the premise of Pixels is the main characters basically take on these aliens that have invaded Earth as the form of these 1982 video arcade game characters. So it's kind of a comedy action thing that's going on. So basically the movie stars Adam Sandler is the main character, Sam Brenner. His best friend, growing up, Kevin James, ends up becoming the president of the United States, President Will Cooper. You've also got Josh Gad plays one of their childhood friends, Ludlow Lamonsoff. You got Peter Dinklage, who plays his arch nemesis gamer, Eddie, and then his love interest played by Michelle Monaghan, who plays Violet, who also happens to work for the president as a military advisor and is in the military. Those are some of the main characters. There's a couple other ones in here. You got Brian Cox is in it, then Sean Bean, Dan Aykroyd makes a guest appearance. And so basically, like I said, it starts out with the main characters in 1982 with your kids. Video arcades are just kind of becoming a hit thing, and you got all these various hit arcade games. You got Centipede, you got Galaga, you got Pac-Man, Frogger, and Donkey Kong. And basically, Sam Brenner loses. It's the inaugural World Arcade Championships he ends up at. He finds out he's really good at games and recognizing patterns in these games. Ends up at the championship against Eddie's character. Ends up losing in the championship match. He ends up becoming runner-up. And, he thinks his life is going to amount to things. And, many years later, he really hasn't amounted to anything. He's basically like a tech guy installing all this tech software for a company. So he hasn't really become anything. And I should mention, actually, that after the 1982 championships, they sent up in a space capsule along with a bunch of other stuff. They sent up a videotape of the championship of the arcade thing that's going on, and all these years later, these aliens received this message, and instead of interpreting it for what it is, it's just some people playing video games. They actually take it as a declaration of war, and come back to invade Earth and fight Earth in the true arcade game style. They give them 3 lives, just like you would in the game. And if they lose all 3, then basically, it's over and Earth is going to be destroyed. So and basically, when they come back, they come back as these different various arcade games. And once Sam Brenner kind of figures it out with his friend Will and the other friend played by Josh Gad, Ludlow. They end up being tasked with how to defeat these aliens and figure it out, and basically beat them as if they were the video game, because they were video game champs back in the day. So I mean, the premise of the movie is pretty unique. It's definitely interesting, it's a really funny. I mean, you got these great actors that are in it. The storyline is great, but it's got some great like scripts and the way it's worded. Some really good humor in it. There's lots of funny bits in it. And, the overall, it's, being somebody, even though I was born in the 80s, I didn't necessarily grow up in the 80s, to see the 80s at the beginning of the movie, and basically, it's mainly based around the video games, but there's other things you see at the time, just really cool. I mean, the 80s was just a really cool era, technology-wise, culture-wise. Just everything about the 80s was really neat. I wish I was actually growing up in the 80s opposed to being born in the 80s, but still, it's just a really neat concept. You see all these old school video games that, even though a lot of them came before I was even born, I kind of grew up with them, and they still kind of had arcades around when I was a kid. So they still had some of these games, and of course, I mean, there's some games you can even still have them get in your phone nowadays, like the well-known games like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. And of course, they developed some games like Donkey Kong, from its early stages in the arcade into a more well-known franchise than some of the gaming platforms like N64 and PlayStation and what have you. So yeah, it was really cool to see that, to put that premise into a movie. It made it really fun for me personally to watch and enjoy. And I highly recommend checking out Pixels. Yeah, you can pretty much find it on any movie source. I'm not sure if there's any streaming platforms out there that carry it. I'm sure there is. Really for all ages, great family movie. I mean, if you're a kid, if you're an adult, if you're a kid in the 80s and you're an adult now and you like this kind of thing, I mean, I highly recommend checking it out. Kind of like a Tron feel with the video games, only it's, you know, it's not taking place in the 80s. It takes place in the present day kind of thing. It's still a really cool concept, you know. You know, basically be taking on these classic video game characters, which are really aliens, disguised as the video games characters in a real life setting. But yeah, great family movie. Recommend it for all ages. Pixels. Check it out. And yeah, have a good night, everyone. Check in the next one. Take care.